The emergence of the internet and globalization have significantly closed the informational and cultural chasms between different nations just in the last few decades. Especially with COVID-19, collaboration is more in demand than ever, and distance is no longer necessarily reason to avoid cooperation. Regarding the light-speed development of technology and data, students are urged to prepare for the future, where an in-person meeting can be replaced with an online discussion with colleagues worldwide. Dr. Liliana Harding of UEA has developed a collaborative online international learning project where students can collaborate on the same project with their fellow students from different universities globally. Hello everyone, and welcome to the COIL series of Norwich Economic Publications. In this podcast, we will present you with exemplary student work from Dr. Liliana's project, which is a presentation on electric vehicles presented by 6 outstanding students from the University of East Anglia, University of Navarra, and the University of Illinois Urbana, Champaign. Now, we'll leave the spotlight to this brilliant piece of work. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Today we'll be presenting our COIL presentation based on electric vehicles not as perfect as we think. We're group number 10, and we could say that this group is pretty special since we have people from America, like Chris, who will be presenting the introduction to electric vehicles. Also, people from the UK, like Mia, who will be talking about problems related to the electric batteries, as well as Felipe, who is from Spain. Aidan will be talking about the individual proposals and the conclusion, and Erick will be talking about the countries and business. Finally, I'm Lucía, and I'll be talking about the introduction. So I wanted to start with a question. Who has not used a car? I bet that everyone nowadays at least has heard about them. Nowadays, we take for granted this type of vehicle, but it was actually invented only 2 centuries ago. The history of the car industry is very rich and difficult to nail a specific date of origin, but it could be said that it was invented in Germany and France around the 1800s, with authors like Carl Benz or Nicholas Otto. However, in the first half of the 20th century, Americans like Henry Ford dominated the industry with innovations like mass production techniques. And you may be wondering, but when did it actually expand to the rest of the population? Well, it was after the World War II, with the production of automobiles that blossomed in the rest of Europe and Japan. And lastly, in the 1980s, the industry had become a shared global enterprise. However, the latest invention happened 20 years ago, when due to environmental crisis that we're living in, humans had to innovate and created a new type of car, the electric car instead of the gas-fueled car, which is the topic we'll be talking about today.
Varying by the country, transportation accounts for about 1/3 of total carbon dioxide emissions, and electric vehicles can make a huge cut into that. Aside from the clear environmental benefit, electric vehicles are also much faster, smoother, and cheaper to maintain than regular vehicles. Tesla has also recently come out with the Model 3 and Model Y, which is a cheaper alternative to their regular vehicles. All of this combined can help make electric vehicles a much more attractive purchase to consumers who don't care as much about the pollution. A major hurdle facing the EV market is the short ranges and long charging times. This is being combated by building lots of charging stations, as well as a technology that could possibly charge your vehicle while it is driving. Governments can play a huge role in this situation by giving subsidies to help provide money to these companies to build charging stations, including a $5 billion investment in a network of charging stations across the United States. Governments can also use quotas. 50%, the Biden administration wants 50% of sales electric by 2030, and the state of California plans to eliminate combustion engine sales entirely by 2035. Though it may take a long time, I think we're on the right track to seeing electric vehicles the regular on the road. One of the issues that can prolong this issue is the fact that current vehicles have a much longer lifespan than the past. It is about 10 to 20 years now. Governments can again play a role by buying back old and used cars, as well as promoting the use of public transportation or simply riding a bike. Currently, the country is doing the best are the Scandinavian countries, Germany, and the United Kingdom. Right now, at the top of the leaderboard, it is about 70% vehicle sales electric, while the UK is only about 20%, which shows the clear drop-off from the very top to everybody else.
The market for electric vehicles has been rapidly growing in the past years, and sales doubled in 2021, reaching a record of 6.6 million. And nearly 10% of global car sales were electric in 2021, which was 4 times the market share in 2019. And in terms of quantity, the total number of electric cars currently driving on the streets are about 16.5 million. Electric vehicles over the last few years have been portrayed as eco-friendly, but it doesn't mean it is entirely true. The battery is made from metals which are mined from all over the world, causing negative externalities. And in the photo shown, we look at what makes these batteries. The most harmful materials required in a lithium-ion battery are the chemical components of lithium with 3.2% and cobalt with 4.3%. This is a concern since the mining of metals includes damages to the environment with the following activities like the exploration, construction, operation, and the maintenance of mines. These activities lead to deforestation, erosion, and contamination. Nonetheless, we're going to focus on the materials mentioned before, since the mining of these metals bring more negative externalities to society than the other metals. Cobalt mining produces a lot of airborne particulate matter, which often contains toxic contaminants like uranium, and the inhalation of these substances has been linked to serious health problems, including the respiratory diseases and birth defects. Cobalt mining sites also contain sulfuric-containing materials that can generate sulfuric acid when exposed to air and water. When this acid drains from the mines, it can devastate rivers, streams, and other aquatic and terrestrial environments for a very long time. One of the biggest pieces of evidence of this externality lies in the Democratic Republic of Congo. They plan to relocate 10,000 families from a town which is rich in cobalt. This is due to the fact that the resource is worth multi-billion dollars and the town is in the way of mining. This was the response of the government of Congo. What is under the ground does not belong to the individuals, but to the state, which has the power to relocate and compensate the inhabitants. This is a clear negative externality of production, as households which have absolutely nothing to do with the production or consumption of cobalt are being forced to migrate.
According to our previous member, it is mentioned that lithium is one of the main components of the electric vehicle batteries. So I would like to present about the link of the extraction of lithium and the environmental concerns if electric vehicles are not in the circular economy. Since International Energy Agency predicted that the number of electric vehicles worldwide would be 125 million by 2030, the use of electric vehicle batteries will also grow up. As a result, the materials and the intermediate inputs like raw materials such as lithium needed for the electric vehicle batteries will also be extracted more. So, however, the sufficient amount of lithium needed for the increased worldwide demand cannot be extracted in one particular region. They are needed to be extracted from countries with full resources of lithium to countries where electric vehicle batteries are mostly produced. So what will happen to that? So it's one of the reasons of one trade happens mentioned in the International Economics by the Finster and Taylor 2020. So what will happen to the country's environment if with the mining activities of lithium for the cross-border of trade? Although there would be many mining processes of lithium, I would like to highlight the two main processes, which are mining from hard rocks and then mining from salt brines. The former method is mostly found in Australia, while the latter is found in the dry regions of South America, which are Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. For mining lithium from hard rocks, there would be the use of heavy machineries, which will consume a lot of energy and produce toxic gases, including carbon dioxide gas. The lithium miners will also cut down the trees from their mining areas, which can contribute to the higher emission of carbon dioxide in those areas. And for mining lithium from salt brines, the producer pump up the brine, which is like salt-rich water, up to the surface and letting it evaporate in evaporation ponds to get the high concentrate lithium. In this process, the millions of gallons of groundwater will be either evaporated or wasted, and this can lead to more water shortages in originally dry regions of South America, such as Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia, and impinge on their local ecosystems. Then, for example, the local farmers can find it hard to maintain their livestock due to the infertile land caused by water shortages. Moreover, the lithium mining in this salt brine mining process involved the acid leaching process to remove impurities before returning water back to the natural environment. So, for example, and causes the poisoning cases, of course. Then, for example, in Tibet, there are a lot of fish in Lichi River were dead due to the leakage of chemicals by the Chinese lithium mining company. So it's very important to sustain electric batteries, not in order to harm the cross-border environment by the repeated actions of mining processes.
Okay, we see a problem that will affect the environment and that mainly concerns mining. But we have a question. What is being done? What are companies, what countries, what individuals are doing in this regard? Let's start for the first one. What are companies doing? When we see of electric vehicles, the company that most of us may think is Tesla. Tesla may be the biggest company in this aspect, and it would be a lie to say that they don't need those materials. However, they have come with a solution for avoiding a bit of this mining. What they do? Recycle. They have a process of recycling that has 4 steps. First, separate the battery cell, then shatter its components into black mass, which is a tiny, dark mixture of many of these minerals, which will then go through hydrometallurgy, a process in which it is added a liquid solution. This liquid solution goes precipitation, and after this, it removes its impurities, ending up with a result of around 92% of the black mass recovered as raw material. Also, they have decided to develop. They are not comfort, they're not waiting for others to do it. They decided to develop in 2 aspects. First, they decided to go with their product of recycle. They want hydrometallurgy to be done at lower temperatures, concretely at room temperatures, temperatures in which will reduce a lot of the energy used and will reduce a lot of the time. So reducing efficiency and increasing efficiency and reducing the emissions and energy consumed by the process is the first of these developments. The second development, and that still has a long way to go, is they are trying to do batteries with only lithium. They are trying to avoid all those metals that are so harming to the environment, that all these problems, they are trying to reduce it and limit it to just one mineral. In this case, lithium, which is the main mineral in all the batteries. We also wanted to present you another company. This company, BASF, is an American chemical company which has recently announced this news. They were opening a recycling plant in Germany, which will be specialized on this type of batteries and will recycle up to 15,000 tons per year. The key idea that we want to give you from this slide is that 95%, 3% more than Tesla, and that shows that that improving this aspect, improving this percentage is possible. Improving this percentage will help and will maybe in a future may be the key difference, be the long run solution, because recycling, as we see, can still improve. Then we're going to move to the countries. When we think of countries and electric vehicles, we mainly think of US and EU. We add these two, but we wanted to start with Korea. Korea recently had promote an alliance with some of the biggest companies that are involved with this to recycle, to specifically recycle all fields of batteries, and with the main goal of securing key materials by reusing or recycling these batteries. As we mentioned, mining is not only harmful, but it's also limited. We want to make an economy that it will end up being circular, as they say, an ecosystem. For this goal, they have set a benchmark. If the recycled battery is over 70% of its lifeline, then it's going to be used for electric batteries at home. And if it's under that amount, it's going to be transformed to hydrometallurgy to new raw materials. After going to Korea, let's move to the United States of America. What the United States always do is subsidize and promote. They started subsidizing with bills such as this one, which basically is a 300 million bill for the federal fleet, which will indicate that all of this must have a recycled electric battery if their battery runs out of their lifetime. And also, they decided to put a facility, a recycling facility that recycles up to 10,000 tons of electric vehicle batteries. The important part of this is that they put this facility at the center of the United States of America, in Alabama. They put this near all the industries near all the car industries. They want to send a message. In the center of all these car industries, we recycle. A clear and image that promotes the idea that the United States wants to do in this regard. Finally, the European Union, which is famous for their restrictions. They have set regulations for 2027, 2030, and 2035, which basically aim to control and set a minimum of the recycled materials. For this, they target cobalt, lithium, lead, and nickel. For 2027 is basically identification, which in each battery will indicate the amount of recycled materials. Then for 2030, the first minimum, cobalt will be at 12%, lead will be at 85%, lithium will be at 4%, and nickel will also be at 4%. And finally, at 2035, these benchmarks increase cobalt to 20%, lead to 85%, lithium to 10%, and finally nickel to 12%. All of this is summed with an active voice from many ministers, which basically state that recycled battery is the key to the electric vehicle future.
So next up, when looking at individual studies, there's a case worth mentioning that occurs at the Worcester Polytechnic Institute, where after processing e-waste to the powder known as black mass, they began studying a process called HYDRO-TO-CATHODE. Some of the steps, such as shredding and leaching, are the same as in hydrometallurgy, but things are much simpler after that. Impurities are extracted using a process that eliminates the need to separate the metals, therefore speeding up the process. And from there, new cathodes are produced and the batteries end up with better longevity than the original. Another research project regards using hemp to make better electric vehicle batteries. Hemp is a fiber plant used in applications such as clothing, building materials, food, and auto parts, and hemp could become a key component of cheaper, safer, better performing, and less environmentally problematic electric vehicle batteries. This was the claim made by a Texas-based startup called BEMP Research Corp, which has developed a lithium-ion battery alternative. It has been engineered and independently tested at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and the prototype of BEMP's B4C hemp technology have been proven to offer significant advantages over lithium-ion batteries. The main advantage being that it doesn't include the most environmentally harmful metals that nowadays batteries uses. The only problem is that it cannot be fully done just yet. So what can we expect from the future? We hope that electric vehicle batteries would act in the manner of a circular economy. A circular economy is a model of production and consumption which involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, and recycling existing materials and products for as long as possible. In this way, the life cycle of products is extended. In practice, it implies reducing waste to a minimum And when a product reaches the end of its life, its materials are kept within the economy wherever possible. With this said, companies that act in accordance with this model will benefit both the business and the environment. In addition to this, we also hope that these electrical vehicle batteries will continuously reduce the metallic components present in the battery due to the fact that these are the most harmful parts for the environment. And besides this, companies would face less restrictions, meaning more profit for the business. Lastly, it is true that these proposals are currently being put into place and are being developed, but it still requires more time for the job to be completed. However, at the pace that technology has been improving, we can see a greater potential for this problem to be resolved. Thank you.